Wait, what should we do?
Let's be creative here. I need you to say something instead of, howdy, folks. We'll just do the Halloween thing.
Oh, that's specific enough for me to know what the heck you're talking about. Howdy, all you ghosts and goblins, and welcome back to another episode of your favorite podcast, That Would Be Rad. We're a podcast that majors in 80s and 90s nostalgia, comic culture, all things paranormal, and minors in retro video games, tabletop RPGs like Dungeons and Dragons, pre-internet mysteries, and raising our kids to be half as cool as we were back in the 80s. We're your hosts, Woody Brown.
And Tyler Bentz.
How you doing, pal? You okay over there?
Just stroking out.
I mean, it's spooky.
I was going to say, it's because there's so much just spookiness in the air. Every morning we pull out of our road, I take my girls to school, and like there's this old barn across the road.
Dude.
And fog. And it's just, I know I've said it before, but it is like just picture perfect. Like, it's sort of like the Thomas Kincaid Christmas, like the Halloween version of a Thomas Kincaid Christmas painting. It's like just perfect.
Yeah, except that you're painting a picture here that really implies that you're still living rural. And I got to say,
I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to send you a picture.
Okay. I agree, man. The way that, especially like these are those mornings where like whenever it is a clear morning and the sky's clear and and where I live, there's no streetlights.
It's very dark, yeah.
So it's extremely dark. There's not a lot of light pollution. You can see the stars just popping right at you, right out at you. Yep. And, as the sun's starting to come up, there's this strange sort of, we talk about the thinning of the veil, and you kind of feel like, man, is that happening all around me? I won't lie to you folks. The other day, after we published last week's episode, I went back and listened to it on Monday morning, just like you, and I kind of spooked myself just, out in those woods, walking around in the morning. So anyways, that means a couple things. One, we did our job. And two, It's the best time of year.
It sure is. I mean, I could do without, we have like 15 soccer games per weekend, and I would appreciate it if it would just cool down already, because it's still pretty dang hot.
It's 58 degrees this morning whenever I stepped out of the door, and it's supposed to get into the 40s this week.
40s.
Yeah,
I heard that too.
In case folks are confused and they're like, well, I didn't know we got the Weather Channel. I was thinking about something the other day. I was walking around my house, and, Tyler and I both are, well, we like to call it collectors. There's other people, our wives, for example, who would consider it more like hoarding.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that have a lot of sentimental value to us that we put on our shelves, things that people have sent us, for example, things that we've collected over the years, even back from our childhood. And as I was kind of walking around, we've been talking about the spooky season. We talked about the different things that we wanted to, do episodes on during the October Spooktacular. It really started coming I started to think about something that we have sort of brought up before, and that is like strange objects that have...
Yeah, you really started painting a picture for us.
Nicely done. But like these strange objects that we have, that each one of them kind of has their own history. Just a silly example is when I was rebuilding, I should say, my VHS collection from, the random sort of box of tapes from my parents' house. I would, purchase them at yard sales or on eBay or whatever. Each one of these tapes has lived a life of its own, if you think about it, right? Someone else's house. Someone watched these scary movies as a kid or as a teenager, as an adult, and now I have it in my house. Every single one of these things, right?
Yeah.
And that's when you start to really kind of think about that, it's not strange, but it's actually pretty fascinating, right?
Well, and also like especially considering, the tapes that were from like the 80s and the early 90s and even 70s and back is like, for kids nowadays, like, and this is my get off my lawn speech, but it's
Here we
like
go.
for kids nowadays, like everything is just at your fingertips. But for us, it's like yes, if you had like a TV guide, or once you got into like the 90s and you had like a satellite or like cable, if you got cable, earlier than all the other rural folks. But before that, you pretty much had like a stack of tapes that you would just watch a million times.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's pretty cool to think like, oh, wow, like I had this old tape that somebody just like threw out, but like this could have been the tape that like this one that like pretty much sort of formed this kid's like personality, behavior, because he watched it a billion times, I think that's cool.
It's really cool, man. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like you think about all the different places that these tapes, for example, have been. And then you start thinking about things that we also talk about, which is superstitions. Now, I say this jokingly because it reminds us of The Office. I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
Yeah. Yeah.
How would you classify yourself, Tyler?
I mean, it's weird because like I do consider myself a little bit of like a true believer, and not in the sense of like I just sort of fall for everything, but I do like okay. I like to consider myself somebody that's open-minded to, high strangeness, weird stuff. I've always liked to approach these things with an open mind because, even you go back to like, the Bible and it's like there's so many things in this world that are supernatural. And I think now that we're in like the, quote unquote, like the modern age, there's just so much of that that's just been dumbed down and sort of, it's just like boring. It's like, oh, nothing supernatural happens. And it's just, we know everything. We're on top of everything. We have a scientific, nomenclature for everything we've discovered. And it's like, I don't like that. I like the idea that there are still hidden things. There still are like, esoteric, occult, secret, paranormal things out there that we have no idea. And maybe eventually we'll figure out, but I consider myself pretty open-minded.
Okay. Now that was a pretty long
sorry.
to not answer the question. I feel like I'm watching one of these debates that are on TV, but what's the answer?
I didn't have my earrings on that give me all the answers. As far as superstition goes, I don't know. I mean, there are a few little things that I'll do, but I don't think I really get super hung up in being like superstitious. Like if a black cat crosses, I'll do like the X on the windshield and that stuff. But it's almost more done
at this point out of habit, right?
Yeah, habit.
When
maybe
you're
like
so close to 50, it's
a little bit of like irony, maybe even.
Well, I happen to think that black cats are good luck because so Italiano. Okay, so the thing that fascinates me about superstitions really is just how serious certain people will take it. Obviously, you and I, based on what we just said, will take some things like, sure, there are some things that I just won't do. I'm not going to go and just start busting mirrors.
Right.
With rocks and stuff. I'd probably yell at my kids if they did. I'm not necessarily going to purposely walk under a ladder. I'm going to feel a little weird about it if I did. But there are some folks that are just like, dude, I'm not going near that. I mean, they'll, turn around and go the other way if a black cat crosses in front of them. They'll do all that. They've got a set of rules almost that have been passed down over generations. Last week we talked about the local folklore in our area with the Foxfire books.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of these superstitions, actually we did a whole episode about superstitions, and you can listen to it here.
Hear more about this on That Would Be Rad, Season 1, Episode 13, the Superstition episode.
Where we kind of talked about and broke down the fact that some of this just comes from old traditions and stuff. I mean, it starts to work its way into like, some of these superstitions warn of like bad omens.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you can be kind of gallivanting throughout life and you get this like strange feeling, in your gut that tells us, I don't really want to mess with that. I often talk about the fact that that's part of the reason why I just don't mess around or didn't whenever I was younger, you
Yeah.
know, Ouija boards and stuff like that. I'm like, I got
same.
I got a soccer game tomorrow. I gotta get
You know,
plenty of rest.
now that is one thing. I mean, I've never really been into like the Ouija board thing. It's always kind of freaked me out. And my Aunt Linda, who I've talked about a million times, she was sort of my, you know, psychopomp, if you will, into like the paranormal, supernatural, all things weird. And, you know, I'm forever indebted to her for that. But she had one that was like the original, like bone planchette.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, who knows how old it was, like 30s, 40s maybe. But yeah, I've never got into it. And I will say, as I've gotten older, like those kind of items, you know, the idea of like Robert the doll and some of those kind of, you know, cursed objects, whatever. I am a little more fearful of that stuff as I've gotten older.
Well, and we're going to dig into that a little bit more as we talk about what we're talking about today. You know, what we need to figure out together as you all listen to this story, and Tyler is listening as well, I want to figure out, are there these items that exist that are somehow connected to superstitions when something becomes so ingrained in even like a small local society or, you know, in a broader sense, just society in general? Is it all just sort of almost like compounding on top of itself in terms of this hysteria and fear from an object? Is it a situation where there's just sort of mass paranoia that sort of originates from this general idea? So think about that as we're talking about this, because today we're talking about this strange account and situation, events that occurred starting in the early 80s that Tyler brought to my attention. The second that he did, it was like, oh man, I love this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because it's so weird. And this one kind of takes it to another level. So today, let's dive into this strange, mysterious, and definitely spooky story about the curse of the crying boy. All right, folks, now here's where things are going to begin to get spooky quickly. Let me set the stage. In the early 1980s, in South Yorkshire, England, there's a couple named Ron and May Hall. Something insane happens to them. Their house catches fire out of nowhere. But what's really weird is, after the fire, when they're sifting through their charred remains of their home, only one single thing survived the flames. Can you guess what it was? A painting. But not just any painting. This was a popular one at the time. A painting of a little boy with tears streaming down his face. Now, here's where it gets even creepier. The Halls weren't superstitious at all, but they took one look at this painting and immediately thought, this thing is cursed. And they weren't alone in that feeling, because this wasn't the only time that the exact scenario happened. It happened dozens of times across dozens of homes all over England, houses going up in flames, and in every single case, the only thing that made it through the fire was this same painting, this portrait of a crying boy. Now let me ask you, Tyler, do you believe that a painting can be cursed?
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Sephora stores are everywhere you are. So just pop in when you need a brown lip to match your 90s playlist, a confidence boost before your interview, or a last-minute gift for mom's birthday. There's always a Sephora near you. Just pop in. Use our store locator to find your local Sephora or Sephora at Kohl's.
Reporting live from under my blanket, I'm Susan Curtis with Duncan at Home. Breaking news, pumpkin spice iced and hot coffees are back. I'll pass it to Mr. Curtis with his blanket for the full story.
That is so right, Susan. You know, it's never too early to get in a spicy mood. I'm talking cinnamony goodness that's so tasty, people don't want to leave their blankets either. Back to you.
No, back to you.
All you.
The home with Dunkin' Pumpkin Spice is where you want to be.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
So, you want to be a marketer. It's easy. You just have to score a ton of leads and figure out a way to turn them all into customers. Plus, manage a dozen channels, write 1 million blogs, and launch 100 campaigns all at once. When that's done, simply make your socials go viral and bring in record profits. No sweat. Okay, fine. It's a lot of sweat. But with HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools, launching benchmark-breaking campaigns is easier than ever. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Shop Blinds.com right now and get up to 45% off select styles. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Hey guys, this is Woody. Just wanted to break in real quick before we get back to the episode and say that we are still collecting listener stories for our finale this October during the October Spooktacular. It's going to be amazing already, but we still want more stories and we'd love to have them. So if you have experienced anything spooky or scary in your life and you want us to tell that story for you, or if you want to say it with your own voice, go to our website, thatwouldberadpodcast.com, where you can leave us a voice memo or even write us a message with your story. We can't wait to hear it. Thank you so much for listening. Stay spooky.
It's a pretty cool place if you're a Martian.
Or a vampire. You think you really know what's happening around here, don't you?
Is anyone out there?
We're fighters for truth, justice, and the American way.
Hey, this is Woody.
And this is Tyler. And you're listening to That Would Be Rad.
And now, back to our show.
You know, my logical side wants to say no, but I do think it's possible, and I've read enough to know that there can certain objects can hold on to, you know, I don't know if you want to say like energy or whatever, but like, you know, kind of like with the jinn and stuff. I think that certain, you know,
energy, memories.
Yeah, I don't know about like souls and stuff per se.
Sure.
But yeah, I think there's something to it.
The way that this was going on, because this was happening like so, not necessarily frequently, but enough times, this story sort of spread like wildfire. I shouldn't say that, but it went across the whole country, and it wasn't very long that everyone was kind of talking about the so-called crying boy curse. Mm-hmm. The legend said that if you hang this portrait in your house, your restaurant, whatever, your place is basically a fire waiting to happen. It's almost like if these walls could talk, but instead they burst into flames. You know, there's this theory about art that goes a little deeper than just appreciating how it looks. Mm-hmm. This is kind of one of those things. Globally, it's a little different, but some people say that you can actually feel an artist's emotions through their work. Like, have you ever had like a home-cooked meal where you just could taste the love and care that, let's say, your grandma put into it?
Yes, and on the topic of like artwork and stuff, I do think that there's like for me, example, I can have like a piece of work, you know, like a commission piece or something that I'll literally put in like 100 hours in. Mm-hmm. And so I do think there's got to be something, you know, as far as like energy fields or something where you are putting yourself like into that work, especially when you spend like so much time and like intention You know, that kind of thing. I think there could definitely be something to that.
Yeah, especially whenever I think about it in terms of that like home-cooked meal by grandma. You know, like you could do the same exact recipe. In so many cases, like we've got recipes from like Ann's grandma or my grandma and all this. And it's the exact recipe, handwritten by them. And there's just something about it doesn't taste the same. Now,
because she's
using 100% lard, just throwing like handfuls of it, for sure.
She gives you the recipe, but then what she leaves out is she puts 2 more sticks of butter in there.
It's 2 more sticks of butter, a whole scoop of lard, and a ton of sugar, like the whole bag. She's not using cups for measuring. She's just pouring the whole thing in there. And that's probably true.
Yeah.
But also, I've always felt like my mom makes the absolute best on the earth chicken and dumplings. And she does so when we are like sick. So anytime we're sick, it's like, I hate being sick. And at the same time, I kind of love it because that means mom's going to bring them over. And she does, dude. And there's like this, I swear, there's something about it that immediately...
Heroin.
Like, there's like, there's like healing properties to it, dude. I feel like, because it makes me feel better instantly. She brought it over to my mother-in-law's house once. It made them like feel better instantly. There's something about like this intention and this energy of like love and stuff that's being put into this work. And just like we talked about last week and just all the time, if there's good stuff, well, I think it's safe to assume that if good emotions and good energy can be saved or sort of
like stored.
Stored and felt through somebody's work. The same thing is true for bad things.
Now, real quick before, and I may be jumping the gun here, but do you think there's an element of, not to just leave it at this, but like almost like a placebo effect where our minds are sort of filling in that gap and creating that sort of power, if you will? You know what I mean?
Yeah, possibly, of course. I mean, there's always that potential. However, dude, like I never even thought about it in that way. For example, again, using the chicken and dumplings example, like it just physically made me feel better immediately. Now, maybe it's just because my body needed nutrition. This happens to be flavorful. And you know what I mean?
And your mom's a cleric.
And she's a cleric.
Yeah.
And like a halfling cleric.
Exactly.
So the thing is, I think we can all, the reason I use that example is I think that anybody listening, no matter what they believe or how open they are to like any kind of strangeness in the world that's ever existed, you can relate to that, you know? Maybe there's a favorite lady at the lunchroom cafeteria when you were in school. We had one. Her name was Virginia, but we always called her Ginya. And she would always give me an extra slice of pizza without charging me. So there you go.
She gave you diabetes, though.
Yeah, well. So, like I said, coming back to it here, if we can, you know, be on the same page, if we can kind of just make this agreement together that, you know, there's a potential that good emotions and energy can be stored in something,
I think
then
so.
it's fair to think that negative stuff can as well.
Yeah.
It's almost as if, like, I'll give you an example. We were talking about your art. Well, let's talk about Edvard Munch's painting, The Scream.
Yeah.
Everybody's seen it. It's one of the most iconic pieces of art ever, right? You've got this ghostly figure with wide, terrified eyes, standing on a bridge, hands pressed against its face, while the sky behind it's like this blood red color. And you get this feeling when you look at it, this unease, like you can feel those emotions. This feeling doesn't really come out of nowhere. Apparently, Munch dealt with some heavy trauma. He lost both of his parents, a brother and a sister, by the time he was 14 years old. That painting, well, there's a couple of things going here. One, he's good at conveying those emotions, but you can almost feel like that painting has trapped those emotions, almost like they're sealed into these brushstrokes.
Yeah.
Now, imagine a similar thing happening with this crying boy painting.
Yeah.
Could it be that the artist's own darkness somehow got embedded into the art itself? And if so, could that darkness manifest in ways that go beyond just giving someone the creeps? Could it lead to real life events like fires?
Yeah.
Let me set this scene once again. Again, it's the early 80s in Nottingham, England. There's a woman named Jane McCutcheon. She's living this quiet life with her 2 young kids. Nothing out of the ordinary. But she has this one prized possession hanging in her living room. That same crying boy portrait. For some reason, she loves it. She can't explain why. Have you ever been drawn to something, but you can't figure out why?
Yes, absolutely.
I can't think of anything personally that I'm just like, other than like, I just got to get that jacket, or like, it's usually something like that. I don't know. I can't really think of anything. Well, I mean, like a St. Christopher necklace, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I have the St. Gregory necklace, which belonged or was given to me by a person that's no longer with us. Yeah. Which, speaking of, I have thought of that numerous times because, well, you and I both, like, we never take these necklaces off. And so, I think it's called like, is it psychopathy or psychomancy or something? I always get it wrong. But, back to the idea of items like holding on to stuff, I do feel like if I, when I pass on from this mortal coil, that, this necklace may, I don't know, not like haunted, but I do think because I've worn it every single day of my life since I was like in my 20s, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like something's got to be imbued.
Speaking of not being superstitious, here we go. Just kind of outing ourselves. Like, I won't take this necklace off at all. So
same. Yeah.
So this lady, like, she has this just strange sort of connection with this photo, and she kind of sits it right above her fireplace. Ooh. Now, when you folks see a picture of this, I gotta say, like, and I'm not really trying to pass judgment on anybody, but I'm also equally fascinated with the fact that somebody just wants to put this in their house, let alone prime real estate, like above the fireplace as a centerpiece item. It's just kind of strange. Kind of like my cousin who was fascinated with clowns when we were kids, and he just had like paintings of all kinds of different clowns. And I was like, dude,
yeah,
you want to play Nintendo?
Yeah, dude.
Anyway,
my stepdad, when he moved in with us, like he, for some odd reason, he had like, I mean, I early 80s, I think it was sort of a trend or whatever, but he had all these like huge, professionally framed like clown paintings.
Yeah.
And one like was like on our staircase, like my whole youth. And it was this giant clown, like sort of straddling like the world.
Okay.
Like he was like sort of floating in space on top of the earth.
Killer clowns from outer space. Anyway,
weird, yeah.
So one night, she's in the kitchen cleaning up, and her 2-year-old comes running in, pointing back at the living room. When she goes to check, she sees that her handmade drapes are on fire. The flames are spreading fast, so she grabs her kids and runs outside, calls the fire department. By the time the fire's out, her entire house is destroyed. Everything is just burnt to a crisp, except, you guessed it, for one thing, the painting.
Yeah.
And here's the part that's going to send shivers down your spine. It's even happened to me as I'm about to say this. When the firefighter saw the painting, he turned to Jane and said, "Oh no, not another one."
Yeah.
It turns out that, again, this wasn't an isolated incident. Firefighters across England had reported 50 homes destroyed by fire, all of them with that crying boy painting left unscathed in the rubble. 50.
Yeah, that was the line that when I heard that, I was like, oh, we've got to cover this.
Right? I mean, that goes beyond coincidence at that point.
Yeah.
1, 2, heck, 4, less than 10, we'll say, times. That would be like, wow, strange. I mean, even then, if you get above like 4 occurrences, it's like, you can't really call that a coincidence anymore, right?
Yeah.
And now we're talking more than 10 times. I mean, we're talking 50 different homes, all destroyed, all with this painting. Dude, let's dive deeper into some of these strange stories surrounding this crying boy painting. Just guaranteed to make your skin crawl here. One notable case comes from a pizza parlor in Norfolk. This place burned to the ground, leaving nothing behind except, again, the crying boy portrait, which remained untouched. Then there's this unsettling story of 2 sisters from Kilburn who both purchased the portrait, and shortly after, each of their houses caught fire. One of the sisters even claimed that she saw the painting swing back and forth on its own right before the flames erupted. And Now, by now, I think folks had sort of began to hear about it, sort of word of mouth, okay? In a desperate attempt to avoid the same fate, a woman from the Isle of Wight took matters into her own hands. She actually tried to burn her crying boy painting after hearing about its sinister reputation.
Yeah.
But the flames wouldn't catch, no matter how hard she tried. Instead, she claims to have suffered a string of terrible luck afterward, almost as if the curse followed her. Stories like these kept surfacing, making it hard to dismiss the idea that there was nothing dark about these paintings. In fact, this strange phenomenon caught the attention of the UK's tabloids. On September 4th, 1985, The Sun published an article titled Blazing Curse of the Crying Boy. The story chronicled multiple fire-related incidents involving the painting, and suddenly firefighters began to report similar trends. Calls flooded in from all across the UK as people shared their own horrifying experiences. Everything from house fires to unexplained deaths and eerie poltergeist activity. It was clear that The Crying Boy was no ordinary work of art.
Yeah. Well, and also all these sort of accounts, like everything's burns down except The Crying Boy in like every single one, which is kind of wild because, as you know, a painting is usually acrylic or oil, and it burns pretty easily.
Yeah, man. I mean, a lot of paint supplies burn quickly, not to mention like the canvas.
Yeah, right.
that they're on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So who was this boy? Why did this portrait seem to carry such ominous weight? The key to this mystery lies in the signature of the artist, Giovanni Bragolini.
We'll return after these messages.
This episode is brought to you by CarMax. Searching for your next car? Don't settle. Thrive. At CarMax, it's easy to shop online or in person. With upfront pricing and tools designed to help, finding a car you love has never been easier. Plus, you can sell or trade in your current vehicle with an online offer in minutes. No strings attached. Start shopping now to find a car you'll love at CarMax.com. CarMax, the way it should be.
Hey, this is Woody.
And this is Tyler. And you're listening to That Would Be Rad.
And now, back to our show. I think there's more here than meets the eye. All right, according to legend, Bragolini, his real name was Bruno Amadio, was an artist who, after World War II, met this young orphan on the streets of Madrid. This boy, known as Don Bonillo, was said to have a strange, almost supernatural aura.
And that boy was me.
And that boy was me. Oh, whenever he, let's see, he almost had this supernatural aura. Wherever he went, here's the kicker, man, fires mysteriously broke out.
Mm-hmm.
Locals even gave him the nickname Diablo. Now, for those of you that don't speak Espanol,
devil.
Diablo translates to devil. Despite warnings from a local priest, Bragolini, he felt compelled to paint the boy. He became captivated by Don's haunting, tear-filled eyes. And here's when things get even darker. Bragolini's studio later caught fire, just as the priest had warned. Blaming Don, the boy ran away, never to be seen again. The artist's misfortune didn't end there, though. More fires followed, more bad luck, and somehow his paintings depicted various crying children spread across Europe like wildfire, finding their way into department stores and homes that would later burn, leaving behind nothing but those cursed portraits.
Yeah, and so what Woody's talking about is like this, as if this wasn't bad enough, like this became like I guess you could say like nationally or internationally, like mass-produced piece of art.
Yep. So basically there's all these like prints of it, and people, again, for whatever reason, I mean, there was a lot of weird paintings in the 80s, though.
Oh, yeah.
You know, going back to the clown thing, you remember that one? It's like the crying clown thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's one of the ones that we had in our house.
Everybody had it, man. It's so weird. Not my parents, though.
Now,
I don't
also,
like
we had this other one that was like right beside our door when you walk in the house. And
of a clown?
No, not of a clown.
Okay, I'm like, dude, it's just weird. I don't know. I'm not judging, because I feel bad now because someone listening is like, they just like look at their door. They're like, they see the clown picture and they're like, I'm going to take it down now. Yeah.
No, this was like it was like sort of like a mailbox with like a wagon wheel. And apparently
I remember that.
It's like this weird cryptic painting that I didn't learn about until like way later in life, like after I had, long moved out. But apparently it was painted by like a serial killer or something. And
what?
Yeah, and if you like looked at it long enough, or you like squint your eyes or something, you could see like the face of Jesus.
Oh boy.
Like magic, what are they called? Magic
Oh yeah, what were those things called in the 90s?
Yeah, like the books that you could. I never could do it, by the way.
Oh man, I was excellent at it.
I was terrible at it. Magic
vision.
Magic mind.
Shut up. Was it really?
No.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
I can't remember. But
moving on.
But yeah, apparently it was like this weird like painting that was also mass produced, and the urban legend is it was like a serial killer, and you could see Jesus in it.
Man.
So, yeah.
Again, it just goes to show, look, we probably have things in our houses that we're just like, I don't know, somebody had it. But, I just, again, looking at these photos, though, or these paintings, I'm just not sure what drew people there. But some of the folks that had them describe these feelings of just like overwhelming, I don't know why, but I just have to have this whenever they would see it.
Yeah.
And so, all these homes had these. And I don't know that I can say with accuracy that every single one of them burnt down, but I think a large majority did. Mm-hmm. So much so that essentially even the Sun, this UK tabloid, eventually had to get creative with dealing with the overwhelming number of paintings being sent back, because they created, here's what happened. They created this event basically where they had this article, this I guess staff writer for them was just chasing this story down. Mm-hmm. And he came up with this idea where he basically said, look, send us your paintings. Mm-hmm. At this point, he didn't know, I don't think, that it was a mass production kind of thing. Send us these paintings. We're going to like burn them for you. We're going to destroy them for you so that we can get rid of this curse. Well, they just started getting so many that they had to kind of be creative. And so in a final sort of attempt to rid the country of this curse, that's when he wanted to hold this massive bonfire. Mm-hmm. And they loaded thousands of these crying boy portraits onto trucks, drove them to a remote location, and then apparently set them ablaze. But here's the thing. While they claimed victory over the curse, some say that the paintings still wouldn't burn, giving us a chilling reminder that maybe, just maybe, certain objects hold power beyond our understanding.
Now, see, that's the thing that is a little confusing to me. Like, for some reason, I can wrap my head around, like my necklace, your necklace. I can wrap my head around this object that somebody has like had on their body, or something that they're in contact with intimately, like every single day for years and years and years. It's like you're imbuing like your essence into this thing. But the mass production idea is like, that just seems kind of far-fetched. But I mean, in this case, like there is something there,
mm-hmm.
you know?
And there's other elements of it too. if they had this stack of thousands of paintings and they couldn't burn them, what did they do with them? Did they just bury them? Or do they exist somewhere and they're just in a landfill in England?
And now that's a haunted landfill.
Yeah, exactly. What was going on was this sort of vengeful spirit so sort of powerful that he could spread that energy across all those. Was it all just like a made-up story? The fact is, though, that these paintings did exist. They were in circulation, and documented cases where the paintings were still untouched by flames in houses that burnt to the ground were an actual thing. Before we talk about theories, before we talk about what we think about this specific case, I did want to kind of talk about in looking through, the research for this episode, I came across something else that I had actually never heard of. And it's another example of a cursed object that, I don't know, man, it's pretty weird. And I kind of I loved it. So this one is an ornate silver vase from the 15th century of Italy. It's called the Bassano vase. What's interesting, the reason why, I sort of want to talk about this one is there's a lot of similarities here, and you'll see why. Now, this is another sort of, like we'll just say a houseware, right? It's this vase. So again, it'll be potentially found in people's homes. Well, the vase itself was cast from silver. And I mean, right out of the gate, that makes me think like, were they storing like a vampire's heart in there or something? The interesting thing about this one, though, is the curse itself really doesn't have an origin story, so to speak. It's just kind of like the curse exists. Originally, the vase itself was supposedly a wedding present for an Italian bride who lived in a small village close to Napoli. On the woman's wedding night, she was found dying on the floor. Her hands wrapped tightly around this silver vase. In her dying breaths, the bride vowed to have her revenge and then passed away.
Dang.
Whether the vase was already cursed and sent as a threat, or the bride caused the chain of events herself, again, is kind of unclear. As time went by, this vase was handed down from person to person within her family, yet with each new owner came another mysterious death. Before long, the family decided that perhaps they should preserve one or two of their remaining living relatives and hid the vase away in a secret location. Maybe like a family house, or buried underground. Maybe they buried it underground in some consecrated soil or whatever. The story kind of changed depending on who you asked. No matter what, it was kind of hidden away, and they didn't want anybody to find it. That was until 1988, when it was unearthed once more. Examining the vase, a piece of paper was hidden inside reading, "Beware, this vase brings death." A warning which was promptly discarded, as ancient curses are nothing compared to the sweet, sweet thrill of the auction house. It ended up selling for about $120,000 US, and that again is 1988, so that's a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
And then now it's once again entered into this circulation of, being out in society. And with it came the deaths. Supposedly the first buyer, a pharmacist who, rich pharmacist, huh?
Oh yeah.
Owned the vase for 3 months before dying in mysterious circumstances. Then came the 37-year-old surgeon who died 2 months later. The vase was resold once more, this time to an archaeologist who coveted the vase as a beautiful example of high Renaissance work. After 3 months with this vase in his collection, the man was dead. By this point, the vase had garnered somewhat of an unsavory reputation, you might say, and the family could not resell the vase for anywhere near the same amount the archaeologist had paid. However, despite the loss, once again, the vase was sold and the new owner duly perished. Rumors of the curse were now well circulated, and the vase was utterly unsellable. Enraged and taking the fate of the vase into their own hands, a family member hurled the silver vessel out the window. Supposedly, this throw cracked a passing police officer on the head.
What?
But for once, it was actually not fatal. Instead, the officer tried to return the vase and issued him with a ticket for disorderly behavior. The ticket was taken without question, of course, but they refused to take back the vase. Having been lumbered with the vase, the local police tried to pass on the item to local museums, but the legend of the curse put them off every single time.
Even the museum wouldn't take it?
Yeah, they wouldn't take it. And instead, the vase never made it into a museum, but it remained in police custody. Several rumors circulated as to its final fate, but many believe it's buried once more, with others arguing it was hidden in cemetery grounds so that no one would dig it up again. In short, we don't really know where it ended up. Apparently there are, different articles, like Yugoslavian articles that have they talk about the vase's existence and there appears to only be one photograph in existence, which some folks say doesn't necessarily match with descriptions or historical design likelihoods of it. And then also what's curious about the whole thing too is that silver is typically a material that sort of wards off curses and that kind of thing. But again, maybe this bride was seeking revenge and was somehow able to sort of attack. And there's just something to say about Italian revenge is, I would say, stronger than many.
Well, I also think...
I'm just saying, man, you mess with me, I'm going to mess with you.
I'm going to put a deer head above your bed. No, to me, and we've talked about how our opinions on certain things have changed throughout the course of the podcast. So with ghosts and spirits and that whole kind of thing. I do think that if you believe in and usually it's more of a residual type haunting where, it's so much emotion maybe was sort of expelled into our, plane of existence or dimension, if you want to say. I can see, to me, it makes sense that same thing could be sort of embedded into an object, just like it would be embedded into if you go to this place at midnight on this date, you'll see a Confederate soldier or whatever. I think that same thing can happen. But as far as the curse though, I just don't know how that works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like with the boy, the crying boy painting, to me, that almost seems like once it was mass produced and once it was, reported in a big newspaper, to me, I can see how sort of it became an egregore, which is another way of kind of saying a giant sort of zeitgeist tulpa in a way. And so I can see how that would sort of direct something like that. But I don't know, just the idea of cursed objects and somebody sort of putting a curse on something, does that mean that a little bit of that person is still in there? Or, you know what I mean? I just don't know how it makes sense.
How it all works.
Yeah.
Real quick, again, there's this other one that I kind of found amusing. I mean, I don't know if funny is the right word since we're talking about people dying, but there's this thing called the Chair of Death, and it's in North Yorkshire. And this seemingly innocent wooden chair is said to curse anyone who sits in it. There have been multiple accounts of people dying shortly after they just take a seat. Eventually, the chair itself was hung on the wall of a pub to prevent further tragedies. Now, I didn't dig too deep into this one because, honestly, I kind of feel like if I had a pub, if let's just put it this way, if Tyler and I had a pub, you bet your bottom dollar that we'd have some chair hanging on the wall just so people would say, "Hey, man, what's up with the chair?" And we're like, "Well, I'm glad you asked."
And where is this place? You said
Northshire, England. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe Lauren can shoot us a message, and maybe she's heard of some of these.
Nice.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So do so, please, if any of our listeners in the UK have heard of anything like this. Again, you guys are living in a country that's much older than ours, and so I'm sure there's plenty of this stuff in comparison to what we've got. But I definitely think that Tyler and I would hang something up like that and just be like, "Oh yeah, man, that's a cursed chair," and we leave it, and then that's going to bring in some people to look at it, have a pint, and just discuss it. One pint turns into 2, turns into 12, and then you start singing old songs.
Oh, yeah.
The thing about this crying boy, I like you, it's a crazy story. It's weird. It's scary. Was there something about this orphan child who perhaps maybe he had some sort of powers, to burst into flame or to spontaneously combust? I don't know.
I mean, it does feel like a Stephen King type.
Right.
Or he needs to be in Professor Xavier's school for gifted youngsters.
Exactly. Yeah. And the thing, I think over the years people have tried to figure it out. They've talked about potential, they've talked about how maybe the materials used in the painting had some sort of flame retardant attributes that kept it from being burned.
Right.
And okay, sure, I guess. I don't know. Potentially, and maybe Tyler, maybe you'll have some insight into this. I'm not sure because I would feel like, especially for like artwork, high dollar stuff, maybe nowadays there's stuff that is less prone to damage like that on purpose, so that something that's, hey, this painting cost me $500,000.
Yeah.
Your hope is that it's not going to burn to the ground. But I don't really know if...
I mean, typically any of that, because you got to think, like, especially like the original, and even some of like the really high dollar, like sort of replica prints. I mean, they're still using like...
oils and stuff, right? I mean...
Well, not oils, but they're still using like acrylic, or fixatives that are still pretty flammable. Now, with the mass production stuff, like the large scale, like maybe those are the ones that aren't going to have any texture. They're going to be probably in a frame, not like the sort of, quote unquote, like fake ones that are on like a canvas, but like maybe those would have some sort of like flame retardant properties. But I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. This is a case where I don't really know. Like, dude, would you, if you had this painting, well, first, let me say this. Sorry. If anybody has this painting out there, number one, you got to take a picture of it and share it with us.
Yeah.
Have yourself in the picture, hold it and say, hey, I haven't burned yet. Something like that. That would be incredible. I'd love if somebody had those. I guarantee you, if any of these still exist, I know one place that if it is cursed, I guarantee it's hanging up in a certain room, and that's Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Yep.
They may have a daggum original copy of this bad boy.
Or, the Come At Me, Bro, Zach Baggins Ghost, what is it called? Ghost Adventures or something?
Yeah, Bilbo Baggins.
He's the guy that, goes into these haunted places and, taunts them, he's like, get out of here, bro. Like, it's very, bro. But he has, a museum of, cursed items. And, it could be in there because it's a pretty...
stuff like that.
Pretty big, big
Because,
operation.
Isn't he because he's the one that got a hold of the Dybbuk box, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And I know I kind of teased earlier. I mean, it is kind of, in a way, just because he's sort of meathead, sort of bro about it, I guess. It is kind of cool to see him sort of just be like, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to freaking, let's get him, ticked off or whatever.
Well, so my thing I'm glad you brought up the Dybbuk box because, to me, that whole sort of story, I 100%, if I had to, put my life on the line, okay, what do you think this is? I would say it's some sort of jinn type entity in there.
Maybe do you think that this Don kid, the orphan,
wow,
do you think because now we're talking about it was in Madrid, right? And, at some point, there's Spanish influence in if you're looking at the
muy caliente.
No, if you're looking at the what's it called, man, the Inquisition and stuff, and that spread out into there. Do you think this kid could actually have just been a djinn?
Oh man, or what is the fire spirits, like an ifrit? Yeah, that's interesting.
We will return after these messages.
There's something out there waiting for us. And it ain't no dead.
Hey, this is Bryce Johnson from the Bigfoot Collectors Club, and you're listening to Tyler and Woody on That Would Be Rad, because that is rad.
I mean, to me, the thing that is kind of difficult with this one is like, you know, you hear all these stories of like, okay, well, so and you know, kind of like the lady that died that cursed like the like cup or what was it, like the
vase,
vase,
the silver vase,
like
cursed the cup. Welcome to the show, huh?
Well, I was thinking, I saw it in my mind, but I was like, chalice, but like, you know,
choose wisely.
You hear like stories, you know, similar to that, but like this one's really unique because, you know, the quote unquote like curse that's on this painting and even the reproduction, it goes along with like, you know, certain properties that the kid had when he was alive. And so that's where like, to me, it's like, it's unique, but also a little more sort of mysterious. And I don't, my brain doesn't really know what to do with it. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah. Also an interesting sort of detail that I hope everyone hasn't forgotten is the fact that, you know, this kid was an orphan.
Mm-hmm.
Is that why people were drawn to this photo? Is that energy like his wanting to have been a part of something? You know, it's like even when, as an orphan,
like
the reason he was sort of cast out was because of this strange power, and I guess ultimately like his inability to control it, right?
You mean because his house burned down?
Yeah, presumably like he's on his own. Everywhere he went, it would like burn down. So people were just like, "Get out of here! You're cursed!" You know, Diablo.
Mm-hmm.
And I said Diablo with an Italian accent, not a Spanish one. But we're not going to really dig too deep, into that. Yeah, I can't do it right. Anyway, is that why people had that sort of magnetic feeling toward like bringing this thing home?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, it's kind of and here's where you take a drink, the Tim Marchenko disembodied voices, where it's like a lure or like a trap of like, oh, it's this pitiful young boy, like, you know. Although it is kind of a weird, I mean, I know, you know, we change as far as like culturally, like the zeitgeist of what, you know, our likes and what we think's cool as far as like home decor, but it is bizarre to be like, you know what, I want a picture of a kid that looks like he just lost his family. I want to put that on my wall. Like, that's just weird to me.
Or just the fact that he's like crying. Like,
that's what I mean. Like, it's just
it doesn't
real sad.
That's the part where I'm really trying not to be judgmental, but it doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. And so that's why I think maybe even that attraction to the photo was something beyond their control as well. And then I also like to think about this, even though it is spooky and it's weird, and it makes you think twice about, you know, that good deal you find at the flea market. And by the way, well, I'm just jumping all over the place, man. I just need some magic, man. I was going to say, what do people call flea markets in other countries? Flea markets? Anyway, I kind of am leaning more toward this, like sort of being like more tragic than it is nefarious, right? And so just thinking about it in terms of there's this energy that exists in this painting when that painter painted it. I think of it as like maybe the original artist sort of, because in something else that I read, he kind of like took that boy in, and the boy started living with him at that, you know, his art studio.
Right.
And I'm thinking of it in terms of like this artist is like promising him sort of the world, really. Like, we're going to get you out of here. You're going to finally have a family. Like, you can be a part of something. You can be my apprentice even, you know. You'll have a purpose. And then all of a sudden the art studio accidentally burns down. Maybe even it really was something innocent. Like maybe this kid wasn't the one that started the fire there. And maybe it was like someone in the town who just wanted that kid out of there. And they're like, I'm just going to set this fire so that the artist is going to get pissed and kick him out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that boy, because of those promises unkept, because that dream sort of unrealized, cursed that painting. And then that's what happened here. And so there's that energy of that wanting to be with something, a part of something, a family, a whatever. People are drawn to it. They put it above their fireplace. It's so weird. And then then it burns down to the ground, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, it's a lot of, you know, you might think this is quite a stretch.
So do we know where the original is?
So apparently, one of the things that I read was that the original writer of these articles met with the son, I believe, the actual biological son of this painter, this artist. And in fact, there at the time was also a series of these that he did. And it wasn't just the boy. It was, there's like a crying girl. There's just like a bunch of other different things. And none of those other ones, though, were said to have the same cause, which kind of brings it to another little twist and even more specific to that it was this painting.
Like
now,
something with the boy.
Right. The original arter for the Arter. The original writer. Jesus. The original arter. I'm still stuck in Foxfire. The original writer of this article, or these articles, this story that worked for the Sun. The Sun being like the UK tabloid, SUN, not SON.
Which was that kind of like a National Enquirer, or was it like a legit?
It's less like that, man. The English tabloids are, I mean, it's more like, I don't know, Page Six or, you know, because I remember back in my Britpop obsession days, which, by the way, I can't believe we haven't, you know, talked about this on the show yet.
Real.
But Oasis is back.
Yeah.
They're together.
Yeah.
I didn't get any of the tickets, lottery stuff. I think my buddy Rollins did, and I think he's going to see him in Chicago.
And our pal,
awesome.
Grandpa Batman.
Yes.
Ended up getting the ticket to the like pre-sale code or whatever, which is
pretty cool, man.
It is crazy because it's something that people have just been like begging for years, and finally it's happening. But honestly, I feel like if you didn't get tickets this time around, I don't know that it's like coming
also,
back.
like I have this prediction of like part of the reason why I'm not spending some cheddar on it is like I'm going to take my family there. My kids love Oasis too.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I get there and they just get a fight on stage.
Canceled.
And then, sorry guys, it's canceled.
Yeah.
I'm like, cool, I'm in Chicago, which I love Chicago and that'd be cool, but it's just, no. Anyhow,
right.
I was so obsessed with Oasis and stuff back then that I would just try to get my hands on any and every English tabloid.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that I could so that I could say, oh, man, they were seen in this. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like what the Sun eventually, you know, it is kind of like the National Enquirer, I guess.
But I think it's a little more like legit, though. It's not all like, oh, bad boy and
right. That's
that kind of cool stuff.
So I think the thing that I read was that he and the biological son of this painter kind of had come together. They had an original one of these paintings that still survived. And when he went to speak to the Sun, here's the interesting fact. The Sun actually had it not staying inside of his house.
Oh.
So one does exist, at least one. But beyond that, I don't know.
But are you saying one as like a good reproduction?
Yeah.
An original?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I seem to remember like something where the guy was so drawn to this boy because it was one of those kind of like almost like you know, these painters, like you think of like Italy and France and stuff where there's like a big square, like town square, and there's a ton of people there, and then like, you know, they would paint, people would come by and they would be like, oh, do you want a painting? And I think the artist was like so drawn to this one kid because he was just like so crestfallen and so sad. And so that was like the whole reason that he painted him. One thing too that's interesting is like, if you look really close, do you see like there's like a halo around his head? Which is kind of another interesting, it's kind of an odd choice that this crying kid, because, you know, I don't think that people become angels. That's sort of something baked into like pop culture a little bit, but it is interesting because that would signify like, you know, he's already dead,
right?
Kind of thing, which is odd.
And okay, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say another thing that's kind of an off-the-wall approach, off-the-wall painting, ha, ha, ha. Another thing that's sort of like a different angle that's a little bit more non-traditional, I would say, is, oftentimes when things like this exist, where there are multiple instances or multiple witnesses, you hear the term of like mass hysteria or mass hallucinations and things like this.
Yep.
I don't think we can chalk this up to being a hallucination, but potential mass hysteria, okay. I wonder, because we talk about when things are sort of given power, and you talked about an egregore earlier, and we talk about tulpas and things that our thoughts and minds can kind of over time give authority to, I guess.
Yeah, like a thought form.
Right. Is it possible that something happened and because in more modern times, you kind of see this in terms of, well, I mean, like the rumor mill, right? I mean, one rumor can sort of just be put out into the freaking ether of mass communication nowadays, which is primarily social media.
Yeah.
And it can be so off the wall crazy. And all of a sudden it's just like, whew, everyone, it's just everywhere so fast, right? And there's no like, there's no like backpedaling or taking it back at that point. It just takes on a life of its own.
Well, yeah. And I think I think the concept of an egregore has never been more powerful than now that we have social media, because it's like, it's like, I mean, I don't know if our listeners, I don't know if you're like into this, but there's, if you know anything about like chaos magic or, you're a fan of like Alan Moore, Grant Morrison, they talk about chaos magic a lot, but I know you do, Clay, so chill out. But it's the idea that like a lot of people are like sort of putting like intentionally like doing these things to push these like thought forms. And like even with like sort of the Trump around like the Trump administration, they were like people created like the Pepe the Frog and like a lot of that stuff where it was like tied into like the idea of this egregore and like chaos magic, to where they're like creating like a movement to kind of like push something along,
Real quick, because I actually don't know, am I bad? And this is the tree of trust here. I don't know much about chaos magic at all. Is that just like we can't dive into it today because it's just such a...
Yeah, it's pretty massive, but what's a quick way? I mean, it's kind of, okay, just imagine like wild magic in D&D.
Okay.
But like sort of in real life. But
okay.
But it involves like a lot of like sort of sigil magic and...
So somewhere someone is trying to, well... I mean, the only thing I can see, especially just in comparison to, if I'm just comparing it to the state of the world, somewhere someone is sowing chaos. And in doing so, they're utilizing that chaos to their own benefit in some way. I mean, I know that doesn't sound magical, but I mean, that's what's happening.
100%. And I also think that...
it's almost like the magic of chaos. If you're going to just like take the actual sort of like, magical element of it. I mean, chaos is a it's a powerful thing to utilize if you can control it.
Yeah, and I would imagine too that like anybody that's into like Discordianism and sort of that trickster kind of archetypical kind of behavior, like it kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of that stuff. But I mean, yeah, we could do like a full episode on, sort of this like underground subculture of like chaos magicians and that whole kind of thing, because like I said, like Alan Moore, big writer, Grant Morrison, like they talk about it a lot. In fact, Grant Morrison, it used to be on Hulu. He used to have like a documentary about him where he talks a lot about getting into like chaos magics and stuff. And it's pretty fascinating because for him, he was like doing it in a comic book. So it was mass produced, and he was doing sigil magic too. So he was like creating things and like hiding it in issues of comic books. And then it was going out to these mass readership. And then he started, kind of like witnessing like all this weird stuff kind of happening in his real life, because he was like, the intention was so much greater now, because it was like, it wasn't just him doing it. And also it gets into like the idea of like magical like consent I mean, we got to do a whole episode.
Yeah, hold on. I know we definitely have to, but I'm so glad we did this because it's opening up a whole other aspect to this painting. Because, okay, I'm just going to do a quick thing that just bear with me. So I just looked up chaos magic real quick. Just not because I didn't think you do a good job explaining it, but also that's exactly why. It says chaos magic, also spelled chaos magic with a K.
Yeah.
Is a modern tradition of magic emerging in England in the 1970s. We're talking only a few years before this painting occurred, folks, as a part of a wider neo-pagan and esoteric subculture, drawing heavily from the occult beliefs of artist Austin Osman Spare, again, artist.
Yep.
This guy was an artist in England. Okay. It has been characterized as an invented religion, with some commentators drawing similarities, like Tyler said, to the movement of Discordianism. The founding figures of chaos magic believed that other occult traditions had become too religious in character. They attempted to strip away the symbolic, ritualistic, theological, or otherwise ornamental aspects of these occult traditions to leave behind a set of basic techniques that they believed to be the basis of magic. Listen to this, man. Chaos magic teaches that the essence of magic is that perceptions are conditioned by beliefs, and that the world as we perceive it can be changed by deliberately changing those beliefs. Chaos magicians subsequently treat belief as a tool, often creating their own idiosyncratic magical systems and blending such different things as practical magic, quantum physics, chaos theory, and anarchism. Dude, now it's starting to make sense to me. And all it took for me was a quick search, and my apologies for not doing that before. And I know that we've kind of talked about it before. I just wanted to read that because this brings in a whole entirely new sort of angle to this painting. And coupled with the fact that you just talked about that guy that put this into comic books, dude.
Yeah.
You can craft, now it's making sense, with chaos, quote, magic. If beliefs if perceptions are based on belief and belief, all that.
Yeah.
You can literally begin to craft and remold things.
Well, especially with like
what's going on in the world today.
Oh, 100%. And there are people that are that do this stuff like daily, to push sort of on both sides.
This is one of the episodes.
To do to shift, like political movement for the right or the left. But we definitely are going to do an episode. But there's a guy also called James Shelby Downard, and he was really big on kind of the chaos magic thing, kind of the trickster Discordianism thing. But he had a book called King Kill 33, and he sort of gets into it. And it also, it's heavily, you've probably heard me use the term synchromysticism or synchroshamanism, where it's that idea also, and I think this is pretty heavily linked into chaos magic, where, you and I both are really big on noticing and paying attention to these like sort of synchronicities that happen in our everyday life of like, oh, well, Woody and I talked about a song, and then like I haven't listened to the radio in 10 years, but I turned the radio on and it was the first song on. Like little things like that, where it's almost like, like for us, it's like a way of God. Like, I tell my kids, it's like, oh, like synchronicities are, it's God's way of like winking at you and saying like, hey, thanks for noticing. And chaos magic.
Which I've always thought that's a really cool way to think about it, by the way. It's
yeah. And I mean, whether you believe in God or you don't, it could tie into the simulation theory. It could tie into like all kinds of different ways of there being some sort of grand design that's working, and you're just noticing the code, if you will. But yeah, it's like there's a lot of, I think a lot of that the end result of chaos magic and like sort of synchromysticism on a big scale is the egregore. And that's like, it is like a tulpa, and we've talked, for our longtime listeners, we've talked about it a million times, but it's that idea that you put your intention into something and you create what's called like a thought form, or a tulpa, which is like a Tibetan term, where you sort of, your intention becomes like a living embodiment of the intention, of the thought. And on like a wider scale, you know, like I said with Grant Morrison putting his sigils in comic books and stuff, and then going out on a mass readership where, you know, hundreds of thousands of people are reading this book and seeing these sigils, and like, you know, by buying the book, you're sort of, I mean, there's a whole thing to it, which we'll get into on that episode, but it's like a consent to where you're consenting for the magic to work because you're consuming it because you paid for the book. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can look at that as well. But like the egregore is like, it becomes this movement of, like, a lot of times I think people are like, oh, well, you know, I have this opinion because the news told me this about this political candidate that I don't like. When in reality, I think, yes, that is true, and that's very true. But I also think there could be some magical things involved to where it's also like an egregore that's kind of pushing that narrative also. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a fascinating thing. And that's what I was saying before as far as like this painting goes. I think, to me, the part that my brain can't wrap around is how this kid was basically like Christine in real life, where he's burning down all these houses and all this stuff. He's an orphan. He's sad. Like, to me, that's interesting that like ability. I mean, ability is a tough word to say because it's not a positive thing, but it's that idea that like he was capable of doing these things in real life, and then somehow that was transferred into this original painting. But then once it became like more widely known and mass produced, and like, I think once it was like in the papers, I think that's probably where you saw like a real big shift in like the like frequency of it happening like all the time. Mm-hmm. Because it probably did like sort of become like a type of egregore.
Yep. Or at the end of the day, it could have just been a bunch of faulty stoves that were installed in early 80s in England.
I mean, yeah, could have been.
You never know. But again, every single one of them had this painting. Was it that popular?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So one of the things that I'm an idiot, and I will totally admit this, because when I told you about this particular case, I was so surprised because I'd never heard of this. And I was really surprised because I 100% thought that we had already done an episode on this other cursed haunted painting called The Hands Resist Him. And I know that we talked about it. It's like a kid and he's standing by like a...
Oh, yeah.
But I could have sworn that we talked about this cursed painting, and it is creepy and it is weird. But this painting, I think we have to sort of include it in this episode, where it was by a guy named William Stoneham. He did it in 1972. The painting depicts a young boy who's standing next to this like doll, you know.
Almost like a marionette. But
marionette,
like,
yeah.
Not as, but more like lifelike.
Yeah, and like almost like
almost like Annabelle, I guess.
Child size. Yeah. I think that's a good parallel. But apparently, and then the other thing that's weird is like in the background you see like a black window, and you see these like hands kind of like all like on the other side of the window, like, you know, pushing up against the window, like they're reaching out for the kid. And apparently this painting, this is kind of like one of the, probably the number one like cursed paintings, which that's why I'm so surprised that I'd never heard about this, because I remember a while back, like maybe a year or so ago, looking into this particular story. And it's kind of crazy because anyone that's like owned this painting has ended up dying. And then it disappeared in like 1984, and nobody could find it. Nobody could track it down. And then in 2000, randomly, it resurfaces on eBay. And the new owners that, you know, won and got the item, basically they were claiming that like in the middle of the night, the boy and the doll inside of the painting would like fight. And what? Yeah, and they had like the couple that bought the painting off eBay, they claimed that like they had a 4-year-old daughter, and like she would claim in the middle of the night that she would wake up because there would be all this noise, and inside the painting the boy and the doll are like fighting. which is so crazy. There's also a claim by these people that there's like a motion camera footage of the boy in the painting, like physically stepping out of the painting and into the room and then running away, which is like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so like apparently 300,000 people viewed the listing, and a lot of those people, even just by looking at it, claimed that they were ill or like it made them, feel bad or whatever. But apparently William Stoneham, the artist, would eventually come forward to, kind of break the myth and say that, it was never really like meant to be anything like nefarious or like scary.
Mm.
And, it was sort of some sort of odd representation of like him being adopted, and the boy was like him, and just sort of a whole kind of thing. But I don't know. I thought that was really interesting. And then there's also,
it's funny that you say that, because the first thing that comes to mind whenever I think adoption is a dark window of night and a bunch of hands on the other side of the window.
Yeah, right. Well, this one I think you'll find really interesting personally. It's called The Anguished Man.
Oh yeah, dude, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
It also looks exactly like that movie that you're trying to track down.
Kind of, yeah, dude, exactly.
Yeah.
Son of a gun.
Yeah.
We're gonna do the episode about this.
Yeah, but there's like a lot of these obscure weird paintings, and like I said at the top, like usually the outcome is like, oh well, whoever owns these things, they end up dying, a short time later or whatever. But again, going back to the crying boy, like it's just such a unique story, and I think like it just being so specific, like with all the fires, and then supposedly that's how his family died, so that's why he was an orphan. Like it's just such an interesting just case, period. And I love it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's super creepy. It's weird. And it makes us think about, maybe thinking twice again about what you bring inside your home, you know? I mean, I look at some of these paintings like the one that you just showed me, and it's like, imagine you're showing your parents that look, hey, this is what I've done. And they're like, oh, you don't want to paint like some flowers or something?
Well, it is funny too, because since we've started the show, like I used to be a really big fan. Like I love like estate sales. I mean, we both do. And like antique stores and consignment shops and stuff. And like, I love like those like just obscure little items. Like one of my favorite things that I own is like, and I found it at this antique store that Woody and I go to. It's like this sort of Roman-esque guy, and he's holding out his hands, and it's like, it's where I put like my paintbrush.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just love it to death. It's made out of like cast iron or something. But I love picking up these items. But I will say that I do that less now, because when I see these things, I think of like the Hexham heads.
Yeah,
I think
the Churanga stone.
The Churanga stone.
The Dybbuk box.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, now that I think about it, we've actually done quite a few episodes where we talked about crazy stuff that happens with things that you bring into your home.
Yeah. I think there's definitely something to it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think there's something to it, hit us up. Tell us about it on Instagram. Jump in the comments. Tell us a story. Tell us your own urban legend, your localized sort of paranormal, story that maybe hasn't made it onto the internet yet. We'd love to hear it. Shoot us a DM or send it over to thatwouldberadpod@gmail.com, where we'd love to hear your story. And even better than that, we'd love to hear your voice telling the story, and it'll possibly show up in a future episode with cool sound design and, all the things. You can do that by leaving the voice memo on thatwouldberadpodcast.com, our website. If you're not getting enough, you wish you just had more Woody and Tyler goodness and even more rambling, just in case you thought that didn't exist, it does. And it's over on the Rabbit Trail, our Patreon. We'd love to have you. It's such a great way. It's actually the best way of showing your support for the show. Really helps keep the train on the tracks. Tell that weird friend of yours about the show. Give us a 5-star review. It makes a world of difference. And I guess that's about it. I mean, just soak up this time of year, because, we're in it. And it's the best time of year. You got anything else, Woody?
Well, let's see. Don't forget, there's still time for you to send us your very own scary stories that we can include in our October Spectacular finale at the end of this series. So definitely do that.
Awesome. All right. Well, we love you. We appreciate you. Stay spooky. And as always,
be rad.
That's the way it goes.
Clouds in a time where I just needed some sunshine. You were already dead before you became a ghost. You always said our future would be a parade of flowers, but now all that's left is a single rose. That's the way it goes.
Access granted.
We're your hosts, Woody Brown.
Jeez. And Tyler. I was going to do
long,
like a...
What was that? Was it... Is there like delay? Why did you pause for 10 seconds, man?
Because I forgot that I said the and. So I was like...
I'm like, Woody Brown, and you're just like...
I just stroked out.
I need to call 911, folks. I mean, this guy doesn't know his from his elbow.
No, don't put that in there. Just hit it again.
Man, the outtakes on last week's episode, dude.
By the way,
I was just like, and
I did not make a sound.
Spooky.
I listened.
Oh yeah, you did. No,
I couldn't hear it.
Are you kidding?
I couldn't hear it at all.
All it was
it
tooth
was
whistle.
not.
And
I think my air conditioner cut on right.
Oh my god, that's the worst thing I've ever heard. No,
Dead serious.
Shh.